Hello, Godzillavangelists. I am so excited that we got to have Mary Jo Pehl of Mystery Science Theater on as a special guest for this episode. However, because everyone's schedule was so chaotic, we weren't actually able to work out a time where Mary Jo and the three of us were all available. So, this episode is actually two recordings Frankenstein together. One where my sister stepped up as my co-host with Mary Jo, and another one with good old Sam and Joanna. For the most part, it's pretty seamless thanks to Brogan's wizardry, but if anything seems off, that's why. And hey, you get to hear two more opinions about Godzilla vs. Megalon, so enjoy.
There is a legend of one man who persuaded his friends to watch every Godzilla movie ever made. This world is on the brink of destruction. We need you now, Godzillavangelists! Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast. Produced and hosted by Ryan Sargent. Featuring Sam Schlenker and Joanna Brodecki. Hello, Godzillavangelists. I am so excited to introduce today's guest. Mystery Science Theater and Rifftrax writer, performer, comedian, Mary Jo Pehl.
Hello.
Thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. I wanted to have a strong Mystery Science Theater connection for today's episode because
I think you're going to be gravely disappointed because my Godzilla knowledge is nil. So
Hey, me
too. That's okay. We're not just about the deep fans. We're about bringing the love of Godzilla to those who have never experienced him before as well.
So. Okay, good, because I want to pick your brain. I want to hear what you have to say about it all.
Got it. But yes, as most people listening probably know, Godzilla vs. Megalon, often called the worst Godzilla movie. The shabbiest, factually the cheapest. But I think there's a lot of joy you can get out of this poor movie. And the classic Mystery Science Theater episode is the chief example of how, in my book. But yes, before we talk about the movie, do you mind if I ask you a few questions about your experience? So how did you get started with the show? What was the first episode you wrote for on Mystery Science Theater?
The first episode I wrote was Teenagers from Outer Space, which was episode 404.
Mm-hmm. I think so. So this was just a little bit before you came on, but I know that down the line you definitely got to work with other Japanese monsters.
Yes, I did. I like the way you put that. I got to work with other Japanese monsters. Yes, and they're really great to work with. Always professional.
Yes, just the kindest people, really. So humble.
Kind to the crew and the staff. Good people all around.
Yes. So before this, what was your experience with Godzilla? How much did you know him? How aware of him were you?
Well, this would have been way olden times, so there was no Wikipedia. I don't remember. I read my family's World Book Encyclopedia, which you're probably too young to know about, but it was, 3D material in volumes, and Godzilla wasn't in there. So I don't know how I would have researched anything about it except for anything in the newspaper or books. I'm sorry, I'm picking my brain. I think my only familiarity with it would have been probably late night movies, Saturday television, because again, way old school. There were 4 channels and I watched a lot of movies, midnight movies, at late night movies on the 4 networks, and a lot of Saturday TV. So that was probably the extent of it.
Literally seeing him in passing. And,
Yes, right. Yeah, I'd wave at him in the hall. And,
Like we're setting up this personal universe of monsters. They're our neighbors, they're our coworkers, they're all around us, and
that's how I like
know
to
them
think about
in
it.
different levels.
But yeah, I mean, that's how my dad first saw those movies, watching them on late night TV, and he introduced them to us and
oh, wow.
the
Okay.
family legacy of Godzilla.
Oh, sweet.
Yes. So I know that you're working with Bridget Nelson again on Rifftrax. Have you guys done any monster movies together yet?
Oh, that is a good question. Oh my gosh, I have done so many movies over my lifetime, and I don't have a good memory. I don't believe so. There might be. No, I take that back. I'm sure there was some creature in some movie, a creature or two, but it wasn't central to the plot. It was a byproduct of something in the plot, if that makes any sense. I don't know, Ryan. Let me ask you, have we done any monster movies? Isn't that terrible? I should have done my research.
No, that's all right. I'm not a comprehensive Bible. I don't think so, based on what I was looking at earlier.
I think there was one movie we did where there was a creature in some dark, wet, oily place that emerged by some. You know what? I'm going to shut up right there because I can barely hang on to it in my memory, but it wasn't necessarily a monster movie.
It would have been the Glog, my favorite bootleg creature. It's just like I don't even know what to call him. He sounds just like that.
We have a fondness for oily blob monsters, so I'm very curious what that
It's starting to sound dirty, like moist and wet. Oh, I don't want to go. That's not what I'm saying.
What are some of the highlights of the many movies you've seen, either lately or in the past? Like, what are some of your favorites that you have done?
Oh, of Rifftrax and Mystery Science Theater?
Mm-hmm.
Mystery Science Theater, one of my favorites is Space Mutiny.
Oh, yeah.
Because Mystery Science Theater, it's a hard one to call because one movie is dumber than the next. But Space Mutiny had a certain earnest dumbness to it in the costumes, and there's just something about it that I just really loved it. I just really felt, bless their hearts. And for Bridget and me, I always like the black and white shorts that we do, the teaching ones, the conformist ones, trying to teach people how to conform to certain standards. And I also like the ones we do that are more 90s. We did a Susan Lucci one, Mob Wife or Mobster, Mrs. Mobster or something like that. I'm sorry, I'm so tired today, and I have a bad memory in the first place. So those are very enjoyable to me. The Mary Higgins Clark movies, there's a lot to sink your teeth into it. There's a lot to work with, but they're hard to take because her point of view feels very skewed to me and a little confusing. So yeah. Does that answer your question?
It does. Yeah, I love all those educational shorts. That's definitely easy pickings, but so juicy. I always think of Hired, the one that played before Manos, is burned into my brain.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing about being born in the 90s. We never got to experience any of those terrible
fake 90s kids. I really don't know.
I'm now here with Sam and Joanna, ready to talk more Godzilla versus Megalon.
Woo!
Woo! How do you guys feel going into this quote-unquote lost movie?
I feel pretty good. Excited. A lot of thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Good. Because, we danced around it before.
I was with Fiona last weekend, and we were, upstate in some cabin with our friends, and I was humming the dun, da, 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 like singing it while we were cooking in the kitchen. I was like, God, does anyone know what that's from? What is that from? And she's like, Joanna, that's from Gamera. And I was like, oh my God, that is so odd. I never would have placed that. And I forgot that you have that specific knowledge as well.
That's amazing.
It's a great theme song. It's amazing. Yeah. So just wanted to share before we dive in.
And very appropriate. This is a very Gamera-y, superhero-y kind of movie.
100%. For the children as well, if I may.
For the children, very much so.
For sure.
So just to wrap our heads around the chronology of this one, this was after Godzilla vs. Gigan, and right before the first Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla. And as I've mentioned before, this is factually the cheapest theatrical Godzilla movie. This is the one that was made for the least amount of money.
You could maybe guess that from watching it.
Yeah, maybe.
You could maybe tell.
Megalon represents the deepest pit of despair for Toho. This was a bad time for the Japanese movie industry, and it shows. To go into the history here, officially speaking, the movie script was written by the director Jun Fukuda, based on a story from Shinichi Sekizawa, but in reality, based on what people have discovered, it looks like there were only ever script treatments, and then Jun Fukuda would rush out the lines like the week they were shot. So, a very rough framing.
Yeah, anytime I see 3 directors and 3 writers, I'm always like, okay, so this thing got passed around a bit?
Well, the 3 directors is just because of all the stock footage. As far as I know, Jun Fukuda shot all the new stuff for this, but there is quite a bit of stuff from previous movies in it. Including the movie that was literally made right before this. So, even as a kid, you gotta have a pretty short memory to not be like, hey, I've seen that before.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen Fast 10, but it's crazy that half the movie is just Fast 9. And it's like, some people noticed.
I haven't seen it, so I don't know how serious you're being. As far as I know, you could be totally real.
Yeah, no.
That's wild because I just did a quick peek, and it made $714 million US with. Wow, but it had a large budget of $340. God.
I'm gonna assume we're talking about Fast 10 and not this movie.
Yeah, we are talking about Fast 10 or Fast X, if you will.
Oh, yeah, right.
Right.
They missed an opportunity to call it Fast 10 your seatbelts, I think.
Oh, that would have been so good.
My God. They really did. Call up Hollywood.
Or at least the tagline should have been there.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, maybe when they put it in a ride at a theme park, you can get a note in to make sure they don't miss that amazing opportunity. Okay, Ryan, back to what you were saying though for budget. Do you have the numbers on this one? The exact numbers?
I don't. I should have looked in my book. But what I was going to say is somebody has poisoned every Godzilla Wikipedia page. Like every single 70s Godzilla movie has listed as a budget of 1.2 million, box office 20 million. And this is solely
every single one?
Yeah, because this is solely sourced off a book published in 1980 that had like a quote that's like, by the late 70s, Godzilla movies were made for 1.2 million each and could be counted on to return somewhere in the budget in the neighborhood of 20 million. That's not how that works. No. Whoever changed all the budget numbers, that's not how that works.
Well, Ryan, why aren't you emailing Wikipedia? We got to get it solved.
I know. Yeah, I should become a Wikipedia editor.
Who could have done that? Who possibly could have wanted to change important information like that as a prank?
Who was so deeply invested? Yeah. Okay, whoever is listening to the pod now and it was you, just make yourself known, please. Thank you so much. We'll give you some merch just for fun.
Out yourself.
Out yourself now.
Anyway, it ended up making the least money of any Godzilla movie up to that point in Japan.
No.
Which, as I've mentioned before, got Toho to marginally increase the time and money afforded to them with the Mechagodzilla movies that came later. So this was as cheap as it got.
So the people didn't like it at the time?
There's no clear answer on why it dropped off, other than I guess just like people could tell it was cheap, and the Godzilla box office numbers were sliding down anyway.
Right.
Because I mean, technically Mechagodzilla, the one after this, made more money, but it wasn't that much more. Like, it was just barely hanging on to relevance at this point. So it's not like it was a huge outlier. It just happened to make the least money up to that point.
Yeah.
But this one gets a lot more interesting when it comes to America. There's some strange stuff that happens. So it starts out. This starts out normally enough. Imported by Mel Marin, a friend of our old pal Hank Saperstein, who operated a little distributor called Cinema Shares at the time. And they would pump out movies to, drive-thrus and matinees and stuff like that. Occasionally they would give a movie a little more ballyhoo. And this was one of them for whatever reason. Mel Marin thought, like, this is the time. This is the time to bring Godzilla the superhero to the US. And so he told the publicity department to, like, use as much money as you need to promote this. And they worked like gangbusters. So first of all, they created a poster that ripped off the then current 1976 King Kong, depicting Godzilla fighting Megalon on top of the World Trade Center. Something that, as you saw, does not happen.
Wait, is that legal? Is that allowed?
Sure, it was the 70s, baby.
Okay. You're like, they rented a house in Malibu, painted it pink, had the whole machine going.
What was that movie recently that had Ana de Armas in the trailer and she wasn't in the final movie?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So it still happens.
Wow.
That's true.
We need some kind of film court. Keep and watch. Whoever is tracking this minute information on the Wikipedia pages needs to also be holding these people accountable.
That's right.
This has dropped off a little bit, but in like the 2000s and 2010s, there were so many scenes and lines that were shot just for the trailer that they had no intention of using in the movie.
Yeah. That is always, It's a bummer when you go to see a comedy and you realize that all the jokes were in the trailer. But it's simultaneously, when a comedy is really good and has a lot of other funny jokes, it is enjoyable when that moment comes in the movie and everyone there goes, ah, ha, ha, collectively.
We recognize that.
This old joke. We love that one. So,
But yeah, they commissioned a 4-page, yes, that's correct, 4-page comic book, which they gave away somewhere. I wasn't actually able to figure out how kids got their hands on it, but it was fairly widespread. And famously, they called Jet Jaguar Robot Man and Gigan Borodan in the promotional material, even though the names are unchanged in the movie, as you heard. I guess they just thought that would promote better. Like, I get calling Jet Jaguar Robot Man, but why change Gigan's name? Like, what do you...
Wait, what did they change Gigan's name to again?
Borodan.
Bordodan?
Borodan.
Borodan. Also a bummer because Jet Jaguar is pretty slick, It's a pretty cool name.
It is. But perhaps best of all, Cinema Shares stormed the 1976 Democratic National Convention, which took place in New York City mere weeks before the premiere of Godzilla vs. Megalon. They placed giant plaster Godzilla footprints at the entrance to Madison Square Garden, which were there through the whole convention. They passed out Godzilla for President buttons and t-shirts throughout the city.
Wait.
This
is wild.
This is great viral marketing, I gotta say.
It is.
But I'm confused, like, what was the coverage on the DNC was it and who was like, I know, these politicians from Washington will surely love what we're doing here.
Is the implication that Godzilla is one of the Democrats at the convention, or is the implication that he's a Republican and he's trying to drain the swamp?
Yeah. Weren't they worried?
I have one more piece to share, which I think will put in place that Godzilla was supposed to be a Democratic.
This is a heaven alone on the marketing campaign.
But yeah, the point was not to advertise to the people at the convention. It was because all these reporters were there with their TV cameras and writing for newspapers that they would all be in the space. And then, most bizarrely, They paid a group of bikini-clad women to storm the floor of the convention right after Jimmy Carter was elected as the presidential candidate, demanding that Godzilla be made vice president.
What? What?
Yeah.
I don't have any comment other than like the 70s, I guess. It also just makes no... I don't think is there even a woman in the film? Wait, I just realized.
No.
There's no
Which we'll get to. But
There's
yeah.
no woman in the film. Oh my God. Except for those dancers. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Were they
So
wearing those
I kind
outfits?
of-
Or no, that just bikinis, not themed costumes?
No.
Wild.
I gotta wonder if you look at all the news footage of Jimmy
Yeah.
Carter coming up on stage, if you can see them somewhere in the background.
My question then is
very
like, did
curious.
it work?
Well, Jimmy
We're about
Carter
to
got
find
made
out.
president.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
And Godzilla was vice president.
It's also
yes.
confusing because it's like, okay, we're gonna make a comic for kids, and then we're gonna have bikini-clad women at a convention that only adults will be.
Right, yeah.
You know, it's like,
Yeah,
who's
they were
the
like,
audience?
we got it. We covered all the main demographics, kids and straight adult men. That's it. Like, we nailed it.
That's who's
straight
going to see
adult,
this.
politically savvy men. 4 quadrants.
Classic 4 quadrant.
Yeah.
When they did show the movie for critics, they cleverly invited them to bring their families and packed the theater with as many kids as possible, giving it sort of a matinee atmosphere and showing how much the kids would love it, which I don't know why they don't do for more kids movies now that I think about this.
Yeah.
But
And the
ended
bikini
up
women
in-
weren't there on this?
Right.
not that day. They were sitting behind the glass, like watching people's
Taking notes, yes.
yeah. Anyway, this amazingly resulted in Godzilla vs. Megalon having some of the best reviews of any Godzilla movie in the U.S.
Ever? Like, of all of
even-
them that we've watched?
Yeah, bizarrely.
The movie is the
And-
marketing. Wow.
Yeah. Even Vincent Canby liked it. And if you've ever looked up an old science fiction or horror movie, that guy doesn't like any of them. He's a crusty old man who wrote for the New York Times, and he gave it a good review. The critics were not the only ones. It was extremely successful. Godzilla vs. Megalon initially rolled out with 55 film prints. By the time the run was over, they had over 220 due to the demand continually increasing. The movie by...
So to break that verbiage down for me, that means that more theaters wanted it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
they had to keep making new prints so that more theaters could show it at the same time
Yes,
instead of
yes,
mailing it to each
Amazing.
other. By some standards, it was a top 20 moneymaker in 1976.
What standards are those?
And I don't actually know how these box office breakdowns work. Because if you look at the top 20 movies of 1976, Godzilla vs. Megalon isn't there.
Right.
But in the information I have with an interview with Mel Marin, he said it made so much money that it would have been around like the number 18 or 19 spot.
Got it. Okay.
So I don't know if it was because he wasn't like a big studio or what. So I don't know if maybe that's why I say by some standards. I'm not sure on exactly what the numbers are, but if you look at what the movies made and you look at the number he said Godzilla vs. Megalon made, then it would have been in the top 20.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah.
It's always good to dig. You know, it's always good
Yeah.
to press and get the facts.
Yes.
Also, I think
so-
he's the one to trust in this situation, right? Like, he said they made that much money. What vested
Exactly.
interest does he have in the movie that
Yeah.
he's directly profiting off of to do well?
I don't know if I told you guys this, but the show I brought to that theater festival recently was the best show at the festival. I forgot to maybe mention to you guys, but just so we're clear, you know.
Well, and that
So
was
we're clear on it.
that was a top 20 moneymaker, right?
At the festival as well. Yeah, that is how I'm ranking best of. That's how I'm doing it. Is on financials. Yep.
I'm just saying the circumstantial evidence is there.
Right.
So
Now we're our
Cinema
own
Shares
little
rushed.
mystery science theater investigatory
That's right, yeah.
branch.
Actual mystery.
Yeah.
So it did so well. Cinema Shares rushed to buy the rights to 2 more Godzilla movies, which they released the next year. Didn't do nearly as well for whatever reason. But Megalon had made its mark to the extent The NBC actually bought the rights to a primetime TV premiere in 1977, which was the only Godzilla movie of the era to get this. It was presented in a mere 1 hour time slot by John Belushi, who wore a Godzilla costume he had previously worn for an SNL sketch where Godzilla was interviewed by Barbara Walters. And
I could be wrong, but my sources tell me it was the biggest movie of 1977.
Yes.
Number one, right?
yeah, definitely. I can't think of a single movie that made a bigger impact in 1977.
Yeah, no, that's what Saperstein told me.
Anyway, that required the movie to be cut down to a mere 48 minutes, which may have been even more incomprehensible, but may honestly have been an improvement.
I think that would be better, honestly.
And so by a strange twist of fate, Godzilla vs. Megalon was by far the most notable Godzilla movie in the US for many years, helped along by a misconception that it was in the public domain, which so many people put it on video cassette throughout the 80s and 90s until Toho finally cracked down on it in the late 90s and was like, no, we still own the copyright to this. But yeah, it was everywhere. So for a lot of Gen Xers and their parents, this was their image of Godzilla.
This is fascinating, and this is the shit that I love about this podcast so much, because I never would have had this intel, and now I'm deep on some random page on Fandom looking at the Godzilla costume that Belushi wore, and I gotta say it's a pretty good one. It's pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it's did a good job. I've seen that sketch where he does the interview with Barbara Walters.
Yeah,
and it's cute. The actual bumpers of him presenting the movie are lost. So if you know where they are, you could be a big deal by revealing them to the world.
Yeah.
This really is just a lesson in marketing, because
it really is.
Not even to like be negative about the movie. I just can't believe that anyone would think this is the best Godzilla movie, or even the most remarkable in most ways. But it is the one that was marketed the best to Americans, at least. And that, what are we doing here?
And that it's such a broad. No, I love it. It's hilarious.
Yeah.
Hey,
really shows you how important marketing is.
Congrats to that PR and marketing team.
Yeah.
Yeah, they knocked it out of the park.
You did.
Who knows why they didn't do it for the other two movies they had.
I wonder what the budget
shortage.
was on that. Yeah, 100%. Well, there was no Democratic National. There was maybe, in between the 4 years, so they missed out.
Right.
And they were like, was Comic-Con around then? It's too small of a footprint.
It was no
much national
smaller,
coverage.
much smaller.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really hard to market a movie when it's not an election year. Let me tell you.
Absolutely.
I mean, there is the SNL connection, right? They thrive off election year.
They love election year. Bring it back, No, I'm just kidding. I'm worried about this. Anyways,
let's pay less attention to elections. Well, shall we go to the synopsis now?
I guess
Talk
we
about
shall,
the actual
Ryan.
movie.
Now I'm really jazzed, pumped, amped.
Well, all right. Godzilla vs. Megalon, sound effects at the ready.
Screonk.
In 1971, the Kaneken underground nuclear test in Alaska, which was real, by the way, causes chaos worldwide, including the hidden underground kingdom of Seatopia. They lose a third of their country, so they create a revenge plot on the surface-dwelling humans. The first hints of this plan appear when they drain a lake in Japan, nearly drowning young Roku-chan and frightening his caretakers Goro and Hiroshi.
Help! I'm on a silly little paddle boat. Way too far out for a child.
By the way, at least 1/3 of the budget went to that boat. Right?
1,000%. Yes, that's where.
That has 3 fish.
I wonder. When the humans return home, they find it's been broken into by 2 mysterious men who flee in a hurry. Hiroshi investigates clues left behind, while Goro finishes his incredible robot, Jet Jaguar. They make the Seatopian connection, but Roku-chan is kidnapped by the agents as a way to get into the house. The agents tie up Hiroshi, take control of Jet Jaguar, and stuff Goro and Roku-chan in a truck to either get rid of them or take them to Seatopia. It's unclear.
Very unclear.
Seatopian Emperor Antonio releases the god of his people, Megalon.
AK Zeus. To be clear.
I got a lot more to say about him.
Yeah.
We'll move on for now. To destroy the surface world with Jet Jaguar as his guide. The humans manage to get free, and Goro uses an emergency override device to send Jet Jaguar in search of Godzilla's aid. The confused Megalon rampages, accidentally killing the remaining Seatopian agent. And Antonio asks the Space Hunter M Nebula cockroaches to borrow Gigan, which is amazing that that's a real plot point in this movie. Jet Jaguar arrives back in Japan quicker than Godzilla, grows gigantic, and ably fights Megalon.
Sorry, I'm doing the slow growth of him, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
However, he's overpowered when Gigan arrives. The fight is balanced again by Godzilla's arrival, and eventually the good monsters succeed. The evil monsters are dispatched, and Jet Jaguar shakes hands with his new buddy, Godzilla.
Job well done, sir. Until next time.
I thought they were going to hug for a second. I was kind of but I get it, a handshake will do.
It was the 70s in Japan. Too much toxic masculinity.
Totally. No woman.
Right, that's
in the
why.
film. I forgot,
exactly.
sorry.
Yeah.
A few of them dancing.
Right. Yeah.
No speaking female parts in the movie.
No
But
speaking.
sure, let's start there. The movie has a really bizarre feel for a lot of reasons. No women, no extras hardly. The wilderness is like all brown and dead. It's like a wasteland, and the sky is always gray or has that like day for night blue filter on it. It's almost like post-apocalyptic in a way.
No backstory on the characters, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you know, they only had $3 to make the movie, so women charge much more for that, for their contracts, for speaking roles, as we know.
Right. That's how I hear that works, right?
1,000.
Yeah, women make so much more money.
We're all working like Nicole Kidman. We're all just like, no, I'm available for 4 days for $8 million, please. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. In 3 of those days, I'm booked with AMC.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, did you know she does each of those videos live? It's crazy.
Oh my god! Yeah,
Wild.
she's just in an empty theater, just going like you know, yeah, hey Nicole, there's every 15 minutes there's another screening, so we got to roll another one. She goes, yeah, I'll have this is a beautiful experience, and they're like, all right, and cut, all right, and now we got some people going in to see Saw X in 10 minutes, so you know, take 10.
So you can tell very much from minute one that this is a movie made from kids. Because we get an endless parade of explosions and monsters. It's just like we're tossed right in.
You know what, Ryan? Like 15 minutes in, I went, why is this child here? He's not, why are they not concerned for him too much ever? He's always putting a helmet on and fighting as well. And then I went, yes, it's for the children. It did take me, shockingly, I wasn't immediately upon seeing a child on a fish. I wasn't immediately like, this is a movie for the children. I don't know how it got past me.
I'm with you.
I was able to realize it eventually.
I'm totally with you, because the moment that I realized that it was actually for children was when he rode that little tricycle.
Yes, that's when I realized it too. When he rode away on his own on his little tricycle. You're
And
right.
I was like, why are we seeing
But I mean, that's the
this?
crazy thing. It's not a tricycle. It's like an
mini
actual
motorcycle.
motorcycle, but for a child.
Oh, right, you're right. Yeah, a motorcycle for exactly. You're making my point. Why would they show that, except that is the coolest thing to a 7-year-old?
Yeah. And honestly, very impressive that he, as an adult, very impressed by this child for making it. And I feel like the second I realized, this movie is for children, it immediately adds 10 points, and I view through a child's eyes and am much more forgiving and fun-loving about everything.
Similarly, although concerningly, when the two agents break into their home and knock them out, did I understand it correctly that the man kicked him in the balls so hard that he was knocked out? The kid?
I don't know that I saw that, but I wouldn't put it past
We're gonna
this
have to
movie.
give it a
There's some
rewatch.
wild stuff.
I admit, I didn't rewind it, admittedly. So, because I was kind of like, I like that version that exists in my head. I don't want to be proven wrong.
I mean, they treat him rough. That kidnapping scene is dark. When they're shoving him down in the backseat. Unpleasant. It looks very unpleasant.
Yeah, but only from an adult's eyes. From a child's eyes, you're like, yeah, this would happen. This is really scary. This is for me.
This is for me.
And I think it says a lot that even in the 70s, when they brought it to America, they cut that scene out. Because, you know, when you're a little kid, you see that, you're probably going to be terrified of being kidnapped.
I thought maybe that was the purpose, was that little sprinkling of moral or how to like scare kids out of not going out on their own. But maybe it was the opposite and they had to cut it out because it really
It's
was scary.
intense. Yeah. But I think it's interesting that they felt the need to cut that out when there's so much other stuff happening in that era. Movies were pretty dark. A
Yeah.
lot of dark movies, but I'm sure the rating had everything to do with it.
Yeah, because they wanted a G.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. And we watched Raiders of the Lost Ark recently, and as I was watching it, I was like, this movie is legitimately gorier than The Exorcist, gorier than Alien. Like totally bizarre that just how standards have shifted.
A few minutes were cut for the US release, and that was one of them, interestingly. Anyway, to go back to the characters real quick. So we talk about little Roku-chan, who brings me all my streaming apps.
Very good.
Sorry, terrible
Very
joke.
good. Thank you. Brogan, do
He's
not
taken
cut that.
care of by he's taken care of by two nebulous older brother figures.
Yeah, or like one's a brother, one's a friend. And I love when the one that's maybe not the brother, I love when he goes, "Where are my friends?" I love that him as an adult refers to his adult friend and the little boy as his friend. Very sweet. And for the children.
Right.
Yeah, how much are we supposed
So,
to
yeah,
read into that relationship?
It's a good question. Like today, obviously what it reads as is two gay men taking care of a child together.
Right. But they very
But-
clearly said brother at some point.
Right, yeah. But I think back then it's just supposed to be like they're the older brothers every little kid wants, because this is not too many years away from Godzilla's Revenge, where we saw the situation a lot of kids were in, where they were like living on their own or only mom was around. So I think a lot of them wanted like a male figure around to take care of them and do fun things with them. So I think that's the idea generally.
I feel like they do this a lot too in Godzilla movies where they're like, it's my sibling, and it's an adult who's like 20 years older than them. Like, a lot of times I feel like when I first see a child and an adult on screen, I'm like, oh, one of them's a dad, one of them's a mom, and no, they're always just the brother or sister.
Yeah. But yeah, the one who's referred to as his brother, I believe, is Goro, who's an inventor.
Yep.
He later was in Terror of Mechagodzilla, and none of us liked him. He's somewhat more likable here, I guess. And then the other guy, the stunt car driver, is Hiroshi.
Hiroshi, amazing stuff.
That guy knows how to wear a suit.
That guy, he gets points for his red loafers and his car.
He was poured into that 70s suit, I tell you what.
He was
Yeah.
poured into it.
As the Mystery Science Theater version keeps calling it, Wayne Newton's suit.
That's
Yeah.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Yeah. None of the characters besides Zeus in this film, no one had obviously like some big backstory or some kind of gimmicky jokiness to, like, I view them in watching these film more as like groups, right? Like they were the set of good guys, there were the set of bad guys who were maybe referred to as like the Europeans one. I can't really remember. There were the under the sea people, and there were the monsters. That's kind of how I view the film.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
there weren't
pretty much the way they wanted to.
there are no civilians in this movie. There are 3 people alive in this city, and then some bad guys.
And a couple
Zootopia
army
dudes.
dudes.
A couple army dudes. Yeah, those guys turned out okay.
It's super, like I said, all of these things combined, they're all obviously signs of cheapness.
Right.
Except for the women thing. I don't know what that's about.
Well, I think that's called 1973.
But together, they all create a very weird atmosphere.
Yeah, because it's also weird because, like, it's not one of the films from that time that's overly, like, obviously it's for children, but it's not, like, overly silly in that, like, everyone's in a silly costume, or we don't have an evil scientist who's, like, super throwing the jokes in. We have kind of a straightforward movie, and then we have this man coming in his toga, but we only catch glimpses of him, and the rest of it is not in that realm. So yeah, it's weird vibes for sure.
Yeah. This is the closest Godzilla got to aping those Ultraman type shows. But even then, yeah, there's more restraint in this than there is in like a Gamera movie. But yeah, speaking of Zeus, as you keep calling him,
right.
The last major character is Emperor Antonio, who is one of the least regal figures you could have picked, with his U.S. Marine tattoos, his lush body hair, and his
so much body hair.
That
strange hairline.
Yeah, I'm just going out on a limb here, but I'm gonna assume that he was like the cab driver for like the producer one time, and the producer was like, "Oh, you're American. You want in?" Is that what happened?
Yeah, because he also wasn't like like he didn't fit the. You'd think you'd have some kind of buff. Not to judge this guy, but I just didn't. Yeah, I mean, he picked him.
He looks good for a guy in his 50s living in the 70s. I'll put it that way.
That's true.
Well, right, except that what you didn't know is that he's 32 years old, because that's how people age in the 70s.
He is actually in a few other movies. His name is Robert Dunham, and he just decided to stay in Japan after World War II and took on all kinds of odd jobs. So he wrote guidebooks. He was a race car driver. He's actually also in the movie in a second role as the motorcycle driver, up until the point where he gets paint dumped on him. Then it's some other guy. Yeah.
I do love a Renaissance man. Good for. He's in a lot of. I'm looking at he's in a lot of. Wow.
Yeah. And yeah, he was definitely not an actor by by training, but he'd been around the Toho lot quite a bit.
Ryan, I don't know. Point. He was giving me Yale School of Drama vibes. So,
I
mean,
thinking,
as a Shakespearean performance.
Oh yeah. When we keep seeing him, there's kind of like two angles that we see him from, and there's like that. I assume what's supposed to be like a super high tech bleep bloop little light up thing in the foreground, and those kind of like orange background, and him in the toga, like it straight up looked like he was like a dealer at Caesar's Palace to me. Like that thing just looked like a slot machine. I just kept going, oh my god, yeah, I guess the villain is camped out at Caesar's Palace.
Free drinks. After 8.
I do also want to give a quick shout out to the women that were dancing when he was doing the thing. Fun little, cover up outfits over their bikinis. I feel like very in on the trends of fashion now, actually. But I thought it was interesting that they, like, watching them made me want to watch that Coneheads movie. It was interesting. I thought those silver hats they gave them.
Yeah, very weird outfits, and that's. I would call it generous to call them bikinis because it very much looks like basic 1970s underwear. Like
that's true. You're right. Looking more closely, it is just underwear from Kohl's, in fact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they just put some drapes on over that.
Yeah. But yeah, you gotta be more modest for the DNC.
Yeah, all of Seatopia is just great because it's clear that's where the most money went, but it's still just a hodgepodge of the weirdest shit.
Yeah, these other people are in like lab coats. The ones behind the dancers, none of it. I don't know.
Yeah, the Emperor's assistant looks like a dentist in his coat. The giant Easter Island heads, the like weird IKEA lamps.
Yeah, everyone has had that IKEA lamp immediately after graduating college. We've seen them before.
But yeah, that's the only scene in the movie with a bunch of people in it. It's a bunch of people praying and the dancing women in their underwear.
And the military tat.
Yeah.
You'd think they would cover that. Given the logic of... But I guess, no, they didn't have the money to pay attention to the details, so it's okay.
No. Yeah, here's a great example of how cheap this movie was. I found out that they were literally dictated how many feet of film each scene should take. So Toho said, like, based on what we know, this scene should take 1,000 feet of film. So the footage was literally dictated to them. And if they wanted more, they had to plead a special case to the studio to get more film, which is the most brutal budget I've ever heard of.
So they actually had a limited number of footage, film that they could use. So they got 3 canisters and they said, make it work.
They're like, this scene should take 100 feet. This one should take 1,000 feet.
Wow. That's strict.
Yeah, so that's literally the cheapest Godzilla movie. That's the kind of stuff they were working under.
Well, I mean, it's crazy because I heard that they pleaded to get all of their film rolls mega long.
Oh. Wow.
Shut it down.
Oh yeah, one more thing I will point about that scene that reminded me. It took me years to notice this, but Emperor Antonio's crown has a little Megalon like face in front of it. And if I could get any one Godzilla prop that's survived today, it would be that. I want my little Megalon crown.
I thought he had a GoPro on his forehead.
It's a little Megalon face.
That's kind of cute. That's where all the money went. Oh, that's where all the money went.
If anyone's looking for a last-minute Halloween costume, admittedly, you'll have to make a little Megalon, but I think a pretty easy Halloween costume if you have the body hair to pull it off.
It would be a great one.
And if not, you can always just shred a wig, glue all of it to you, and regret it later that night when you're trying to shower. And then, of course, we have the monsters, Godzilla and Gigan returning, and 2 new friends, Jet Jaguar and Megalon. What do you guys think of them?
I think what a fun smackdown had by all in the end. What a fun smackdown for children.
Yep.
As I was watching the film pretty early on, I went, this is going to be one of those movies that has a 30-minute fight at the end, and I'm ready for it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if this is true, especially anymore, but I read that this is the longest fight of any Godzilla. Which actually, it doesn't feel like it. It feels shorter than some of the other ones that we've had in the past.
Yeah.
But
it felt like the movie was shorter.
That's true.
Somehow, right? Like, structurally, there was a point, and I'm not saying that it's a tight movie, because I don't think it is, but it did feel shorter only in that the structure of it was such that at a certain point I went, man, we still haven't like gotten into like, you know, like the kind of second act. You just you feel the pace of a movie, and it was just a lot of stuff happening. I was like, man, it's been a lot of like first act stuff happening here. Like, when are we gonna get settled into the groove of this movie? And it's like, oh no, wait, hold on, we're 2/3 of the way through the movie. I guess we're gonna have the big fight and it's gonna be over. Like so I was surprised. I think when I hit the 50-minute mark, I was surprised that I was as far into the story as I actually was.
I agree.
But not to say that it was short enough.
Right. But because I think too, so many of the films had kind of like the 2-part fight where like round 1, we're gonna like trap them in a hole and they're gonna fight, but like neither one's gonna win. We're gonna kind of go away and try again. But this one was like, no, we're kind of just gonna have the one big shebang at the end, and that'll be that.
Which Godzilla is almost second build in his own movie here.
Yeah.
Has a lot less screen time than Jet Jaguar.
He sure does.
Basically only shows up at the end.
That is a really good point. Yes, it's a long lead up, and it's a relatively short movie, all things considered. But he's backstage for a long time.
It was so cheap they couldn't afford his fee for the full movie.
No, right. They had to pay him day player rates.
But yeah, it feels like they're trying to build up Jet Jaguar into his own hero, his own character. And there were definitely a lot of Japanese superhero shows around this time where the characters all looked very similar to him, these brightly colored robot people. So I guess Toho wanted their own superhero, but I feel like Godzilla, he's already the hero, and he's so distinct. Like, it's interesting that they're trying to set up a new hero for the series.
Godzilla is not humanoid, and I think that was one of the draws, and I know, we talked about having that older brother dynamic and the desire for having this protector. And I see that paralleled in their creation of Jet Jaguar and their own admiration for their hero they created, who becomes eventually sentient. Question mark. He has a mind of his own, and he can become part of their lives.
You guys are smart.
Ryan, can I make a confession to you?
What's that?
All right, so the movie's going, and it's probably about halfway through the movie that Godzilla finally, I mean, I know he's at the beginning, but he really shows
more
up.
than halfway, yeah.
More than halfway through. And his big goofy face showed up on screen, and I went, man, I missed this lovable man. Looking like this, it's so, I saw 70s Godzilla face, and I went, oh, I can't believe this is doing this for me, but look at him. I'm happy.
No, me too. He popped up looking kind of, dopey.
Looking especially kind of derpy.
Yes, and I went, there's our boy.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that.
I was like, wow. Yeah, I felt exactly the same.
This suit was used only in this movie, and people deride it as Cookie Monster Godzilla or Puppy Godzilla. But it's appealing. He's got a very sweet face.
I literally wrote Godzilla looking cute as ever.
Yeah. I can't believe they built a suit for this movie. I would have figured they patched together the most worn out one if they were trying to cut costs.
Well, in Godzilla vs. Gigan, the one before this, it was literally falling apart. You can see scraps falling off of it in the movie, so they had no choice.
Yeah.
They would have used that one again if they could have, probably.
I liked Gigan. I'm sorry, not Gigan. I liked the other one. I liked Megalon.
Megalon.
He didn't have a lot to him, but he looked kind of cool. I liked his mandibles. I found him to be somewhat appealing.
Yeah, I feel like at first I thought, this guy has no fucking tricks. But then he slowly started, spinning some out. I liked his star-shaped laser that shone bright like the light on a Christmas tree. I liked his spinning move when he just spun around Jet Jaguar and made him dizzy. And the drilling and popping up, the mouth bombs. But my favorite thing that he did was hop. That was by far my favorite moment of hop.
He looks very cute hopping around.
And it's hard to win me over as a New York City resident, first upon appearance, cockroach vibes. But, they painted him enough to distinguish that I was able to watch him just fine on screen.
Yeah, he was more of like an invasive lanternfly. Much more appealing.
Which I didn't fully know about until a month ago, but apparently I'm fucking up by not having been stomping on them for 6 months in New York City.
Yeah, I'm surprised you said he seemed like he didn't have a lot going on, because to me he almost seems like he has too much. He has those drill arms, he's got the big gigantic buggy head with the big eyes, he's got the laser horn, he spits napalm or explosive balls or something.
I just meant character-wise, behind the eyes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and I meant at first, they really did not pull out all his stops until, which I get it, because then it, built my excitement and enthusiasm towards the end.
The bomb
My only
was mouth bombs were odd.
The grenade bomb, yeah.
Yeah. And him spitting a grenade up in the air only for it to come back into his mouth was seems like a biological flaw.
Well, I was going to say my only two personality reads on Megalon are cruel, because he laughs. He has this great evil laugh when Jet Jaguar is down for the count.
Yeah.
And stupid, because he does that, and because apparently he can't figure out what to do when Jet Jaguar isn't guiding him around. He must be one of the dumbest monsters.
This randomness that I have a hard time relating to or rolling with, I guess. And when you say bizarre, to me it's bizarre upon bizarre upon bizarre. So maybe we're just requested as viewers to simply give over to this universe.
Honestly, that's probably the fairest point. you just give in.
He just is that way. He's a bug. He doesn't know where he's going.
He's the bug with arms like the Chrysler Building, and Big electric horn on his head.
Yes. And isn't he charming?
Yeah.
It's true.
But you know what? I like it. We haven't had a stupid monster yet.
Yeah.
No,
Megalon can be that one.
I like it. Yeah. Who's the smartest monster?
Well, Ryan will probably say Mothra.
Probably
Which I
Mothra,
would
for real
say
though.
It's not King Kong, that's for sure. But
No.
I do love him.
No, but he's the too old for this shittest monster.
Exactly. He's just the tired one. He could
Yeah,
be
he
smart, but he's fucking tired.
Yeah, he was
In his youth, he was sharp. And then Jet Jaguar has a uncanny resemblance to Green Goblin from the Sam Raimi movies.
Yeah.
Exact same head, which people have
Interesting.
wondered for years if it was intentional or not.
And Willem Dafoe could be in that suit.
It will.
He could be.
12,000% could be. Jet Jaguar will say too, not so many superhero powers, right? Like I thought he would maybe have more stuff jetting out of him, have more little tricks up his sleeve. But he's a good guy, he can pull it off.
Yeah, he
can,
goes go big
body
mode.
slam a monster. Yeah, he goes go big. He has go big, and he has a lot of. I feel like they had where they lacked budget, they made up for in sound effects in this film because there were so many. Whoosh, whoosh, pew, 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 pew. They just were like, okay, how many of those do we? How many pew pews in the film? We got 200. Let's double that, and then the film's ready to go. But I liked his little movements. Whoever was in the suit doing those.
So bear with me for a second, but I'm a big fan of the broader Dark Souls series of video games. And when you play online with people and people invade your world or whatever, the games have like gestures built in. So like, you have dozens of gestures you can do that'll be like raising your arms and shaking them or like taking a bow or like various things. And so inevitably, whenever anyone shows up online, they're just like spamming arm movements. And I feel like every monster character in this movie is just spamming gestures constantly. Like it's just like over and over and over and over.
Time. And in fact, it was one of my favorite parts of the movie. They felt like they were like, when a footballer makes a touchdown and they were just like hyping themselves up with their arm gestures the whole time.
Yeah.
They have a whole monster sign language for sure.
You're so right.
But
Wow.
Jet Jaguar most enthusiastically. And yeah, every time he moves, you get somebody slamming this organ. That's like
And
his
also,
noise.
the little communication between him, I like he had kind of like when people are directing planes on a runway. And I liked that when he, got to Godzilla, their kind of conversation all done in these gestures. But again, for the children, fun to watch. That interaction.
For the children.
For the children. And
Let's
cute
talk-
Godzilla, just so adorable, agreeing to help out.
Yes, I love his gesture. He's like, go on
I'll
ahead.
be there.
Yeah, I was surprised that when Godzilla has his incredibly, bizarrely long, like triumphant run up to joining the fight, he has like a Rocky run with one arm raised like a prize fighter, and he's like doing a Rocky thing. And I was like, man, it's so crazy that they saw Rocky. And then I realized this is before Rocky, so perhaps Stallone ripped off our good friend Godzilla.
Wow.
You know what? Rocky was shooting that big summer when the movie came out. Maybe he
true.
saw it. And he's like, yo, I could be like Godzilla at the end of this.
Holy shit, get Stallone on the phone. I'd love to, before we get into the kind of fight specifics, Skygan too, any call. I mean, I don't think I had any major call outs on him other than, his fun silver hooks are fun.
Yeah, this wasn't my favorite Gigantic. I've always kind of been a defender of his being, he's like a robotic chicken with scythes for hands and like that. I mean, come on. But he was kind of unremarkable in this one, I found. This wasn't his finest moment.
He was just called in as the tag team buddy. Which again, I love that that's a thing, that they call up the cockroaches and are like, yo, can you just lend us a Gigan?
It's also funny that there's someone, I forget exactly the line, but there's someone is like, well, who's Gigan going to fight with? And they're like, oh, the monsters, of course. And it's like, I like that they just write it off as like, oh yeah, obviously he'd help Megalon and not like, we know where his allegiance is. Like he has no dog in this fight. It was just, I don't know, 2-on-2. Who cares?
Yeah.
Get in here, you.
Yeah.
I think the fight too was just so enjoyable to watch because of just like the way it was so obvious that it was just these like people in suits. Like there was one point when Godzilla ran away and you could hear this like like his costume just tracking in the sand, and they didn't edit any of that out. They just kind of like it specifically sounded kind of like a tired suit dragging in the sand. I loved the silliness of it for that.
Yeah,
I think I liked the build of it, of like the very slow moves, pulling different moves out.
They seem to be fighting in a nondescript wasteland. Like there's not even any little like huts or power lines.
Yeah, this was a big problem for me, actually. This is like a real missed opportunity. I mean, if we're going to get serious about criticisms of the movie, and I don't want to hear because yes, I understand the budget was low, but like so much of the movie is taking place in truly the least interesting locations you could possibly set anything in. And like you gotta have this final battle happen in Seatopia. Do you know what I mean? Like it's gotta happen.
You're
like
so right.
Why are we just in the middle of like a nondescript dirt patch? Like so and I remember, if I remember correctly, Gigan kind of had a similar thing where it was like it's supposed to be like a theme park or something. Am I thinking of the right one?
No, you're right. That one at least had a few like theme park rides and buildings, but it was still pretty barren.
Yeah, and this one is just like, I mean, there's nothing to call back to an earlier episode. There's no banana for scale, so there's nothing that shows us that they're big, and nor is there just anything to break. Which, I mean, you gotta be breaking stuff. I'm here for pyrotechnics and stuff breaking because that's fun for me.
Right, we love when stuff breaks. Or freezes, anything. You're right. I didn't think about that, but a lot of under the sea-ness that.
Oh, yeah, Seatopia battle.
That would have been great to have a Seatopia battle.
Yeah.
All we get of Seatopia is that one set and a matte painting, unfortunately. There's one set other than the Seatopia set, which is the incredibly bizarre bachelor pad Goro and Hiroshi live in, which I love.
Sorry, I can't even find my words because it was just so confusing. But those large cubes hanging from the ceiling, I at first went, why? And then I went, oh no, we did get payoff for them when the little child swings on them to knock out the bad guy. So then I understood why they had to have that. It made total sense.
But when you think about it from an interior decorating point of view, like how fucking annoying would that be to have these sharp, heavy objects hanging in the middle of the room?
No, but they didn't also have they just really showed the science area. I got the sense maybe this was just the science office. But you think a kitchen was there as well, maybe a bedroom?
They have to be living there. They're always going there.
That's true.
And yeah, they have these great like yellow submarine style murals in both inside and outside, one of which is labeled Hungry Tiger. It's just the most unfathomable 70s nightmare. I love every bit of it.
They look to be kind of in a neighborhood though, right? Weren't there a few other little cube houses near them when they went back?
Maybe. It's definitely a real house, the exterior.
Yeah.
But yeah. And then of course, as the Mystery Science Theater version always points out, incredibly annoying long flight of concrete stairs you have to go up and down every single time you want to go into that.
You know,
so many stairs.
That's what you get for living in Silver Lake.
Yeah.
Nice.
I want to get back to a little more about the end fight, but I did love the move of using the toy airplane that the kid, whip smart goes, we're just borrowing this, right? And then uses it to, bam, knock out that bad guy right in the nose. I've never seen a move like that in a movie, I don't think. And to know that child built a motorcycle and also has that good of aim when flying a tiny toy airplane, it's an impressive set of skills.
This kid has a particular set of skills.
He really does. And it's great because there's absolutely no reason it has to be a plane. You could have thrown a brick at the guy's face. It's just unnecessarily complicated. But because you're a little kid and you want a cool model plane.
Yeah, and again, that it's not the adult flying the plane. It is the child who's taking the lead.
Yeah. Before we go back to the fight, I want to ask Sam, as a connoisseur of goofy car chases from the Bond movies, what did you think of the big goofy car chase in this one?
I found it to, I don't know. To be honest, it didn't really work for me. if I'm being totally honest, it's a little dull. I was here that I was a fan that there was a car chase, because I know at some point I think I asked if there ever was going to be a car chase in any of these movies. But it felt like they were kind of in first gear the whole time. It was very perfunctory.
Yeah, it feels very clumsy, and I know we've loved seeing Jun Fukuda's praises in this, but he's really not bringing it in this one.
Oh no, he's not. No, I have to be honest. I had I think watching this, you know, my esteem of Jun Fukuda, because there was a bit where I kind of I felt like he did some modern stuff, and you know, we'd only seen his movies and Ishiro Honda's movies. And I suppose Smog Monster was someone else's, right? Which, you know.
And so was Raids Again. But yeah, most of them are either Fukuda or Honda.
and I remember, Ryan, you said, hey, this Jun Fukuda guy, he's the B team. He's the B guy. Like, people like Honda, they don't like this guy. And I remember thinking, you know, he's got a little modern flair. And I kind of dug, like, Ibira, some of his earlier ones. But I think between this and Gigan, my esteem for him is lowering a little bit. Like, I mean, this is the B. This is a B effort here, I think. So yeah, it wasn't. I don't think on any level, action, monster fight, drama, I don't think it was really bringing it on this one. Not to say that it's not enjoyable, but you know, it wasn't his finest hour.
Yeah. Probably depressed by the budget and the circumstances under which he had to make it.
Ryan, what did you...
Or stressed out, or both.
What did you think of the car chase?
I agree, it's really quite crappy, but I find it enjoyably crappy. It's just like the bizarre stuff they come up with, like riding the cars down these concrete steps.
I was going to say that part
in, like,
I found
the county park.
Yeah.
The paint getting dumped on the guy at the end is like, it's like a Herbie movie or like a bad like 80s kids comedy.
And he even did like a kind of like rats motion.
Yeah, he punches in the paint.
The car, him driving through that house that was seemingly made of nothing, and then the house of nothing collapsing on the second car. Again, from the kid's point of view, I'm aware that this is no Fast X I was watching.
Yeah, it's also very disorienting because this is the only sign we get that there's more Seatopian agents than those two guys, who I want to come back to in a second because they're kind of weird in their own right. But yeah, there's not a lot of like grounding. We're thrown into the movie with the picnic at the lake. We're like, who are these people? What's their relationship to each other? And you just sort of have to roll with it. The movie has no interest in stuff like that.
Character development? What's that? We don't like it.
But yeah, these two Seatopian agents are hysterical. It's like when you're coming up with bad guys like infiltrating the surface world, you would think you would give them like some kind of either like cool Seatopian outfit, or they would be wearing like black spy gear. But no, they're wearing like foppish brown 70s suits. They both have nicely coiffed hair, one of them looking like Oscar Wilde and the other one looking like Bluto.
Yeah, neither of them were giving Seatopian vibes at all. They were more giving aliens from space, I'll say. I feel like aliens from space would more be trying to adopt the local wear. And I feel like, again, too, like they also, you know, they didn't have that many gadgets. Like the fighting, you'd think they'd be a little smarter, a little sleeker, but they really weren't. They just had kind of some style and a fun little gun that they got fooled out of using by those truck drivers.
Yes, which there we had it, the second example of nudity in a Godzilla movie. Their pinups in the back of the truck. Very brief, but it's there.
Wow, what is this? The Democratic National Convention?
Yeah, in a movie for kids.
That was also cut in the U.S. version.
Yeah,
by the way.
That makes sense.
As were both of the deaths of the Seatopian agents, which are actually quite brutal, both of them. One of them gets tossed at the car and rolls down a cliff as a dummy.
Yeah, also they replaced his body with a fake man.
And the other one gets all bloodied up and squashed by a boulder.
That was fun.
Yeah. Which he should have learned from Malmus back in Ghidorah. You got to catch the boulder.
Oh, good point.
That's the way to do it.
Well, in Zootopia, people don't play catch with their fathers. And they don't have mothers because we don't have women in this movie.
No women. No women available.
No, they have the only women. There's no women in
the
Japan.
Only women are in
Well, but they're professional dancers.
Okay, I see. They've been hired out.
Yeah, I liked at first I was like, okay, fun here, but I feel like there wasn't enough villainness to them, perhaps. Again,
they're quite lame.
Similar in the vein of us saying of this film just kind of stays a little, doesn't go there for silly, I don't really know here, but do you guys get it?
Yeah, they're quirky and lame, but not enjoyably funny like the Emperor is, for example.
Yeah.
Is that what you're trying to get at?
Yes, I would have loved them to have had an opportunity to go even further with their villainry.
I felt that was the case with this whole movie in a way. Was like, it was kind of schlocky and B-movie like, but it wasn't brimming with energy either. It kind of it wasn't quite our favorite Gamera Goof Mups or Inframan in terms of pure unbridled silliness and energy. It was kind of tired, which I think makes it actually a perfect Mystery Science Theater movie because there's so much space to talk over it and make jokes, but it's not it fails my personal put it in the background of a party rubric in that other than that first scene of Zootopia with the dancing and all you're just whoa, what is this? Other than that, there's not a lot of that for, to be putting on silently in the background of a party that people would be whoa, cars are driving slowly and there's just a lot of conversations with gray skies behind people's heads. Why are you putting on in this party? This is the worst party ever.
So this is near the bottom of your list.
I haven't ranked every movie, but I do think that in that particular regard, it doesn't rank up near the top.
Make the cut.
So it's not just the silly ones go at the top of that list. It's really quite a science to break down exactly what goes on in the background of a party.
Something we may learn more about in the live show. But anyway, you brought up Mystery Science Theater, so let's touch on that briefly. That movie brought so much more life to Godzilla versus Megalon for me, because even when I'm watching the regular version, I'm thinking, I mean, look, I've talked about this before. Mystery Science Theater is near and dear to me, and the jokes are burned into my brain. It gave me so many references that nobody my age understands, let alone people 10 years younger than me.
No one who's not a boomer.
Yeah. But this episode in particular is one of my favorites because it's two of my favorite things coming together, and it's an enjoyable time. So yeah, I watched it. You guys watched a little bit of it and enjoyed it, but I won't linger on it too long, so I don't just say a bunch of jokes out of context. But I do, two of my favorites I gotta call out there's a line in the movie when Hiroshi says, "Hey, wouldn't it be funny if your robot got destroyed in the earthquake?" referring to Jet Jaguar. Which is just a bizarre thing to say. I hope your life's work, wouldn't it be hilarious if your life's work was destroyed? And so Joel in Mystery Science Theater shoots back, "Yeah, wouldn't it be hilarious if the earthquake killed your family?" I always think of that as the comeback in that scene.
So dark.
And then during the fight, at one point, Godzilla uses a tree to batter down Megalon. And they have a great running bit in the Mystery Science Theater episode where everyone's shocked that Godzilla did that. He's playing dirty. Culminating in Jet Jaguar saying, "Godzilla, a tree? That's not like you." That is also a great moment.
Well, by the way, Ryan, I had a thought on that moment, which is that I went, "Ooh, tree weapon, cool, I like it," but it reminded me how much better the weaponizing of a tree was in Kong vs. Godzilla, jamming it down old Gotti's throat.
His throat.
Like I think
iconic. You can't compare to that.
there's something about this movie that it's so nice to go back to the 70s. Go back to the pre-80s era of Godzilla. But this one in particular just reminds me of the things I enjoyed in some of the other ones more than fully enjoying this one.
That's fair enough. But to bring it full circle, watching the Mystery Science Theater version or watching it with friends and having a good old time is the best way to enjoy this movie. And it for me, when you do it that way, it lands in the top half of Godzilla movies. It has all the appeal of a WWE match. And I remember watching it when I was 6 and 7. And yeah, I was totally invested during the fight when they were surrounded by the circle of fire. I'm like, how are they going to get out of it? Not just thinking like, Godzilla could just walk through fire. He's done it a lot.
I was like, also the plot of this film being, that the Seatopians are the bad guy, and then like you're like, we were the ones who are nuclear, tested, destroyed. Like they're not actually the bad guy. They're just trying to be like, hi, you killed 1/3 of our where we live. But I just like that for the sake of the children. Like that doesn't matter. They're never gonna, follow that. And
would you say that this one? Oh, sorry.
Yeah. No, you go.
Would you say that this one is a more successful metaphor than the original Godzilla in that regard? Just
right, exactly.
Isn't man the real monster?
And they slip in
It's
one
funny
line at the end about peace again.
Yeah, it has the most direct reference to a real life nuclear event since the first one, hilariously. But it's totally bizarre. It's almost like a reversal of the Godzilla philosophy. Like, nuclear weapons are these horrible things that should be eliminated as much as possible. And this one's like, well, it was bad that we did that test, but
they still shouldn't.
We're still going to have to kill you guys.
I had a Sam is uncomfortable moment. A sum, an S-U-M, a sum. I had a sum, which is when Godzilla is picking up Megalon and just repeatedly smashing him into the ground. He's smashing into the ground a hollow costume. It's like a dummy version, if you will.
Held up by wires.
Yeah, and Megalon's knees are just bending backwards at the ground repeatedly every time, and that's unpleasant. Hyperextended knees are no joke.
No joke. And that too, watching that shot, I was like, okay, he's gonna throw him down 4 times. No, 8. No, actually 27 times he's gonna throw him down. That feels accurate for how long this movie is.
Well, he kept noticing that Megalon still had ligaments in his knees, and he went, not on my watch.
No, sir, not today.
Gotta liquefy the legs.
That's right.
I let you go.
Liquefy the legs.
Godzilla really seems to gloat in his victory at the end of this one like he hasn't before. He's cheerfully running towards Megalon and smacking him around long after he needs to.
They all gloat though. I mean, the 2 bad, quote, bad guys are jumping on the side of that fire ring for a long time.
This might be getting too granular for this movie, but I didn't personally care for how humanized Godzilla was in this. I mean, he's straight up. He's Rocky running. He's high-fiving folks. He's too human. And I think maybe the combination of that with the lack of any buildings for scale, especially made it feel like it was just a bunch of men tumbling around. But I sort of wish that if you have Jet Jaguar, it makes sense for him to be humanoid because he was built by humans and he's shaped like a human. I kind of wish that Godzilla wasn't. And when Jet Jaguar at the end goes for a handshake, animalistic Godzilla would be confused by that and not know what to do. I kind of wish there could be a little contrast.
Yeah, you're right. This is definitely the movie where the artifice is at its thinnest. It's very transparent what's happening, and it's very transparent who they're appealing to. So in terms of enjoying the movie unironically, it's very difficult. Almost every decision is wrong.
I think that the men in suits aspect of it is yes, what I loved about it. and enjoyed watching, and Godzilla being more human for me. I feel like looking back on all the times I said I loved King Kong, except for the original one when he was not good.
Oh, you mean the best King Kong movie, bar none?
Yeah, the assaulting King Kong. Yeah. I feel like human Godzilla, like I'm the most on his side. Like, I feel like this movie for me made it very clear why children would be like, Godzilla, the good guy, kind of puppy dog human monster who's on our side. I get it. But agreed also that it, like, I think too with Jaguar at the end when the, little boy and whoever the other two are up to him, you can like see the eyes of the human in the suit, I think, if you look closely. Like, so low budget.
I wouldn't be surprised, because that you just reminded me of one thing. We haven't talked about that song, first of all, the Jaguar theme.
That was awesome.
But also, in that sequence, there is a shot where the editor didn't cut it right. And you can see the actor standing still, waiting for the director to call action for a second.
And those moments are so, for want of a better word, tender to me, because you really see the humanity of people just trying to get a movie off the ground. We always said on Mystery Science Theater in interviews and having these discussions that it's hard to make a movie. It's just as hard to make a bad movie. I'm not saying Godzilla is bad, but it's hard no matter what the end product ends up being. So when those moments happen, you really see the humanity behind it. And somebody's going home and talking to their spouse or partner, and you wouldn't believe the shit day we had on the set, and we couldn't get Godzilla to. It's such a unique world, and there's humanity behind it.
That's a great sentiment. One I always try to think of as well is these people, they want to make movies, and they're doing their best in their own way. So even there are many good Godzilla movies. This isn't one of them. Even when you make a stinker like Godzilla versus Megalon.
Ryan, I hate to do this, but there are a lot of shots where the editor didn't cut it right.
Sam, what?
I agree, but that one they didn't even do their bare minimum job correctly.
Sam, what did you think about the editing in the fire sequence, though? Come on, where they just cut. You love that, right?
That stuff I didn't even mind as much. There was a lot of, I found it, and I know it's really hard to judge editing, because it's hard to judge it independently of what was shot. But at the same time, there were an awful lot of cuts that were very disorienting, and stuff like someone punching someone and cutting it seemingly on the worst time to cut it on a punch, so that it at least feels like a punch and also is very confusing as to the cause and effect that's happening. That kind of stuff. Like, even compared to like Inframan, which Inframan was much more, I think, successful, I guess, with its editing, even if it's often crazy. This one I found kind of hard to follow. You remember when during Final Wars that I said something about like I could tell what was happening, and we were like, like as a positive, like this, I had a hard time always knowing what was happening.
Yeah, to pull another Mystery Science Theater joke, they say during the car sequence, action sequences filmed in Confusovision, and that's very true.
Yep.
Apart from the monster fight, most of them are very disorienting as to what's going on. Well, shall we go to the judgments now? As always, as the Godzillavangelists, it is our holy duty to assign each movie its proper place in Godzilla, heaven, hell, or purgatory, with heaven being the best, hell being the worst, and purgatory falling somewhere in the middle. I'm a little unsure where I'm going to land.
Me too. I don't want to start.
All right. Can we start with you, Sam?
Sure. Man, I think it's a hell from me. If I just am really being honest, there's a lot to like, and I think I said it, but like this takes me back to era of Godzilla movies that I like. And so there's a lot of charm to that. I just really didn't think it was very good. And I also didn't think it was actually, I mean, I think it's a perfect Mystery Science Theater movie. I don't think it's a really fun, like, silly watch. I think if, like, I'm looking at this era of Smog Monster through Mechagodzilla, like, Smog Monster and Mechagodzilla I really like quite a bit and are, like, possible top 5 Godzilla movies for me. And this being kind of sandwiched in the middle is not so much my favorite. And nor was the other one with Robot Chicken.
Gigan.
So yeah, I think it's a hell, but I was charmed and taken to it brought back some nice memories. But it's not on my background of a party list. So what does it have for me?
Right.
What's even left?
What was even left? No, it wasn't the most fun. It wasn't the most fun bad one for me personally, and that's a hard thing to quantify. Like, I understand if it is for you, but it's not. Not for me.
It's a personal thing to quantify a fun bad one.
Right? It's hard.
Yeah, I think we've watched more fun bad movies outside of Godzilla canon. No, the 98 one is a better bad movie.
That's what I was thinking, and I know I'm going to infuriate many people, but that is a more enjoyable bad movie than this one.
Yeah. This is number 2, though, for me. Second place. And so I think you convinced me to put it in hell because it just is such a cheap, sloppy, sad little movie. But there's enough earnestness to it. Like, you can still see people trying, struggling to make something entertaining. And, for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, it hits. Intended audience loved it. And,
Vincent Canby loved it.
Yes. Crusty old man. So there is a lot to love, but it's almost entirely ironic appreciation. So I will put it in hell. It's just so crappy. But despite putting it in hell, it still is in the top half of fun ones for me to watch. I just either have to be watching the Mystery Science Theater version or like watching it with some friends, having a couple drinks, that sort of vibe. On your own, it's not going to be that enjoyable. Perhaps. If you haven't seen a 70s Godzilla movie in a minute, it might be.
Then you got to watch the Smog Monster.
Yeah. I mean, Smog Monster's better, Mechagodzilla's better. This is the one I would say if you want to watch a bad 70s Godzilla movie, this is your choice. But that's a very niche pick. Anyway, I'm going to stop rambling. Joanna, where do you put it?
I don't know if this has ever happened where you two have both been...
It's happening.
No, I'm not... Don't worry, I'm not... I think I would put it in high purgatory.
Okay.
I can't say the movie has much going for it. I'll start with that. But I think, again, very strictly watching it through the lens of a child, I do think this movie very clearly showed me why children would be on board with Godzilla, where the hype would kind of come from. And I think through the eyes of a kid, I won't even say he wasn't even anywhere near my favorite kid. Like, we'll do separate rankings for those. But okay. The fish pedal boat, the little motorcycle, the toy airplane being used as the biggest weapon of them all, the tiny little sprinkle of fun with Seatopia costumes. And then really, I think for me, what won me over with this one was the monster fight at the end. And I'm also saying this out loud, like, who am I? Because 5 years ago, I'd be like, Ryan. And again, oh my God, the monsters were fighting for 30 minutes. But there was something so satisfying to me about the 2-on-2 nature of it. The hoopla they were all doing, all the arm movements, the thousands of sound effects they were throwing into the mix. That, again, thinking of it through the lens of like my nephews watching it, I'm like, they would really love and probably be like exclaiming out loud about this whole sequence. And so for that, there's no character development. The characters individually, you would not count them, on their own for anything. The plot, it's all hardly there, but for the monsters alone, and Godzilla alone, and I really can't believe I'm saying this. High purgatory for the children. Oh, and no, huge other
amazing.
point. The marketing. I have to add marketing into my ranking. When I see something kooky that they're doing, I have to take that into consideration for the film as a whole. So high purgatory for me. Yeah.
Yeah, if we were counting Mel Marin's campaign, this would easily be a heaven for
Heaven
me,
alone on
'cause
the.
that's
If we're
just
only
wild.
looking at the marketing, that's obviously
Yeah,
but the whole
this might be the GOAT of Godzilla marketing.
yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Made an impact. Made it part of American culture.
Ryan, I really can't believe how the time has passed, and for me to be like arguing a film or just stating that a film landed like maybe 3 steps above where you placed it.
Well, yeah, my placement was difficult. I'll put it that way. I don't really know where to put it. I'm just landing on hell out of a desire to stay
I'm
somewhat
curious too if I was like
objective.
fresh. I need to like rewatch some of those other 70s one if I was like fresh on this. But it just felt so
But I
refreshing.
think you made a good point. This is like a direct improvement on Godzilla versus Gigan, because that also ends in a long 2-on-2 wrestling match. But despite the fact that Ghidorah is a better monster, the one in Megalon feels so much more fun and snappy. I feel like they were knocked down to the ground and rolling around a lot more.
And I think because
In Gigan.
Jet Jaguar is kind of humanoid, there's a kid could kind of see them, you know what I mean? See themselves a little more in that character. I don't know if the kids were doing that, but they could.
Yeah. Oh, I almost forgot. I have one more great story about Jet Jaguar. So Toho actually had a contest and say, like, hey kids, design your own character to be in the next Godzilla movie. And so the winning entrant was a character named Red Aron, which actually doesn't resemble Jet Jaguar that closely, but had the same basic concept, same coloration. It was like a robot superhero. And they brought him, the kid, on a TV show to unveil it to him for the first time. And when the kid saw it, he started crying because he was so upset that they changed the colors on the costume.
Oh, I thought you said he started crying because he was excited, but he was crying because
No, he was
mad.
upset. He didn't like how they changed his design.
That's awesome.
How old was the kid? Like 8?
Like, yeah, 7 or 8.
Oh my god, I love that. He's like, this was not in my contract that you changed the colors. No.
So we could use some more letters and reviews. Please send them our way. But I do have a couple comments on our video games episode that I did while you guys were occupied. I asked people what monsters they played in the Godzilla fighting games, and I got a couple answers here. Michael Schwartz said Anguirus. Sorry, that's Anguillus. Anguillus and Megalon were my boys. So there's the Megalon connection.
There's a tie-in.
Yeah, Megalon never been in another Godzilla movie, but he was in all the fighting games. There's just something appealing about.
He's a good fighter.
fighting
He's
in
got
Megalon,
those,
I guess.
napalm out of his mouth things.
Yeah. And then Ethan said he'd like to play as Gigan and King Ghidorah. King Ghidorah was my favorite as well. If you have any more video game thoughts, send them our way. Or, of course, about this Megalon episode, anything. We'd love to hear from you.
Ryan, in those games, could you only play monsters, or could you ever play one of the like alien evil characters with the fun outfits?
No, they were just straight up giant monster fighting games. Yeah.
Well, that's a bummer. No, I'm just that makes sense.
But yes, share us with your friends, families, anyone who loves weird movies, bad movies, monster movies. We'd love to keep spreading the word of Godzilla. But do you guys have anything you want to share?
No final notes on my end.
Okay. Oh, but here's what I will say. Our live show by now is over, but you can still buy a virtual ticket if you missed it to get the video and audio version. That's the only way you're ever going to hear it. We're never going to release it for free. And you can also check it out if you want some merch. There's probably some left.
Fantastic merch, by the way. And
yeah,
let me
don't
just
sell
say
yourself
it was
short.
Take a look.
There's none left.
it was
It's hugely popular.
That's true. Yeah.
Packed
And let me
house.
just say also, it was a rockin' good time of a show. It was an amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, can you believe the celebrities that showed up?
The best performance of my life I've ever given.
I can't believe Nicole Kidman came in between doing live AMC.
I know. I can't believe we got her. I'm glad my DM worked.
Yeah, she was a blast. And I mean, it was really nice that Toho sponsored us and everyone got to leave with a free copy of the next Godzilla movie.
Exactly.
Amazing. All right,
And thank you to everyone who came, you know?
Yes. Thank you so much.
I know we're closing in on our end of time here, so I just wanted to thank you again for joining us. And if you'd like to share anything with the audience, what you're up to, what you're doing next, anything like that, this is your time.
Well, thanks. No, my absolute pleasure. And I feel like I was pretty useless as a guest
Oh, no.
because I just feel like I learned so much from both of you. Again, really out of my element, and I appreciate your forbearance. So thank you. I do a streaming show once a month called The Mary Jo Pehl Show with my colleague and producer, Chris Gersbeck. So look for it under Dumb Industries, and Rifftrax with my hilarious pal, Bridget.
Mm.
So if you are inclined, here's the Midwestern soft sell. If you want to check out those things, you know what else is pretty true to form is Fargo. Some of the accents are, no, I shouldn't say that. The accents are pretty spot on, not in the Twin Cities area so much, but the outlying area, although sometimes they get a little Wisconsin-y in the accent. But there's a lot of accuracies there with the long goodbye and the well, I bows, and so they really hit a lot of good notes with Fargo.
And both great movies, so
Yeah.
if you want to get your brush up on your Midwest culture.
I'm gonna revisit it. A million times.
I have seen neither of those movies. Yeah.
Now's the times.
All right, that's next.
But we'll let you all make your departure now. We'll see you next time, but in the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.
Woo! See you next time.
Godzillavangelists, a Geek Stew Network podcast, is brought to you by me, Ryan Sargent, and my friends Joanna Brodecki and Sam Schlenker. This episode was edited by Brogan Malloy. All our incredible music is composed by Robert Mai, and our wonderful artwork is drawn by Cassidy Stone. Special thanks to our families, friends, and the wonderful artists who made the movies we talked about today. Godzillavangelists is a satirical, critical work not affiliated or endorsed by Toho, Legendary Pictures, or anyone behind the Godzilla series. Visit our website at godzillavangelists.com. We're also on Twitter at GodzillaCast and Instagram at GodzillaVangelists. If you prefer to listen to us online, we have a YouTube channel. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you join us next time. In the meantime, keep spreading the word of Godzilla.